However, Fungshin wasn't dumbfounded for too long before he had an answer. He was just about to respond, but Jianlan only sneered. Forget about it. You don't need to say anything. You're someone else's prisoner right now. Whether you dare to claim your son would all be empty words. I won't believe anything you say. Don't say any more. Even if you're willing, I might not be. That fetus spirit was curled in her arms, slithering its tongue at Fungshin, snickering in a grown-up voice. Jianlan spanked it forcefully with a slap on its behind, scolding, "What faces are you making still? I told you not to run off. You're driving me mad." That ugly little face shriveled a bit, and finally stayed still. The mother and child hurried out of the palace of Nanyang, while Fungshin yelled from behind, "Jianlan! Jianlan!" There was no response. In the end, there was only him left once again within the palace of Nanyang. Fungshin slumped, falling back into his seat, glaring at that giant white radish that was left behind, covered with rows of crooked teeth marks. He glared at it for a good moment, his right hand supporting his head. Then he lay flat on the ground. Even the energy to curse had left him. Above the palace of Nanyang, Shilian also sighed. Just then, Huacheng suddenly spoke up. "Gege, do you still remember that night at Mount Yujin? That fetus spirit had also appeared?" Shilian knew he was purposely changing the subject. But that business with the fetus spirit appearing at Mount Yujin was also questionable, so Shilian was cooperative and forced himself to lighten up. "I remember. At the time, when I was riding the marriage sedan, it used a nursery rhyme to give me hints on how to find the ghost bride, which was Xuanji. It also didn't let anyone else hear. It was only to me specifically. I wonder why." "Probably by Junwu's direction," Huacheng said. "Then the answer to the riddle would be Junwu's objective," Shilian said. "And the reason as to why it's become a fierce spirit under Junwu's command. I'm afraid those are all questions for Guosha." "Then let's go ask," Huacheng said. "I've got good news for Gege. The wraith butterflies have already found where the Guosha is held." Shilian's spirit was immediately raised. "Where?" "The palace of Lingwen." Inside and outside of the palace, the innumerous civil guards with scrolls stacked high as the mountains, rushing in and out, were all missing. Instead, the new addition was the expressionless, heavenly martial guard, patrolling rigidly. They dropped onto the corner of one of the roofs soundlessly. Shilian said, "Guosha is locked up here? Is Lingwen watching him?" "Correct," Huacheng replied. "With the brocade immortal on her, Lingwen is considered both a civil guard and a martial guard right now." After observing intently for a moment, Shilian commented, "Then this is going to be tricky. While the brocade immortal was no match for them, it still possessed a high cultivation, and it must be sharper than those patrolling guards on the Grand Avenue of the heavenly capital. If Shilian and Huacheng snuck into the palace of Lingwen recklessly, just like this, even if the brocade immortal couldn't defeat them, it could very well still detect them. And once the brocade immortal discovered them, then Lingwen would also know for sure. Lingwen and Junwu must be able to communicate with each other spiritually. If Lingwen discovers us, then Junwu will discover us," Shilian said. "Unless the brocade immortal isn't on her at the moment, then she'd only be a civil guard and would not be able to detect us. And a removed brocade immortal is a mere robe. It won't be able to alert Junwu either. We have to think of a way to separate the two." However, Huacheng replied, "We don't need to think of anything specifically. She'll have to take off that robe sooner or later." No explanation required. Shilian understood. The Brocade Immortal wasn't anything good after all. Its aura of evil was thick and heavy. Since Ling Wen wasn't formally banished, she was still considered a heavenly official, so to always be wearing it on her person would be bad for her health. She had also needed to maintain her male form, which would exhaust her spiritual powers. And there probably weren't many who could keep up with that kind of exhaustion. There had to be a time every day when she took it off to rest. The two were whispering plans with each other when, just then, a black-clad man strolled out from within the palace of Ling Wen with a hand behind his back. He gave some sort of instruction to the soldiers guarding outside, then stepped into the side chamber. A moment later, he exited the side chambers by himself and entered the main hall anew. That man was Ling Wen. When he went in, he was in his male form, and when he came out, she was in her original form. The black outer robe on her person had also disappeared, and her steps weren't as light and energetic as when she was in her male form, and visibly skilled in martial arts. She had indeed removed the robes, and now the Brocade Immortal was in that side chamber. The two exchanged a look. Hua Cheng said, "Now they're separated. Gogo, you've got pretty good luck." Xilian puffed a breath and gave him a look. "It's Sanlang's luck, that's pretty good." Hua Cheng grinned. Main hall, side chamber. After a thought, Xilian decided, "Let's go with the side chamber. Who knows what the situation is like inside the main hall of the palace of Ling Wen? And if Guo is guarded right next to Ling Wen, then we won't be able to get around her. But if we can get our hands on the Brocade Immortal, maybe we'll still have room to talk." Thus the two waited for a bit, and when the guards were changing, they took advantage of that timing and hopped off the roof, sneaking into the side chamber. The moment they leapt inside, Xilian wiped away his cold sweat. No matter what, sneaking into the private chambers of a lady official wasn't anything to be proud of. However, after he saw the state of the side chamber, his nervous expression faded a bit. Xilian's old chamber was more sumptuous than this. Fungshin's was more disorderly, and Mu Qing's was more tasteful and exquisite. In any case, this didn't look like the private chamber of a lady official at all, so Xilian didn't feel as stressed. There wasn't much furniture inside the chamber, so it was difficult to hide anything. It didn't take long before Xilian fumbled out a chest. However, the moment he opened it, his face darkened. It wasn't because the energy slammed into his face the moment he opened it, but because the chest was stacked full of black robes that were exactly the same. This again. It was the same thing last time, when they had to try and find the real Brocade Immortal within hundreds of different clothes. It was a mess looking for the thing, practically a nightmare. This time, there weren't as many sets, only a few dozen, but every robe was black with barely any difference. It was hard to tell which situation was more dispiriting. Was the Brocade Immortal actually here? Feeling his head throb, Xilian asked miserably, "Sanlang, what's Jinwu doing right now? Do we have enough time?" Hua Cheng had been monitoring all movements, everywhere, closely, and when he heard Xilian's inquiry, he replied languidly, "Gogo, relax. We've got plenty of time. Jinwu hasn't noticed you're gone. He's currently at the Great Martial Hall and has brought Mu Qing in to interrogate. By the looks of it, it'll be a while." Hearing this, Xilian was taken aback. Mu Qing? He's interrogating Mu Qing? Why? "Wraith butterflies can't enter the Great Martial Hall. I can't hear clearly, but you know," Hua Cheng said, staring at Xilian, "it must not be anything good." Xilian recalled how Jinwu had treated Yin and felt vaguely anxious. But even if he worried now, it would be pointless, so he said resolutely, "Let's hurry then. Let me try each of the robes on. Sanlang, come give me orders." If the brocade immortal didn't want to be discovered, or if it didn't want to take the life of whoever put it on, it could be worn just casually. However, if someone made the other wear it and gave that person orders, then that person must obey the orders. Using this method, they should definitely be able to expose the real thing, the only downside being it was a bit dangerous. Huacheng said, "Let me do it." Shilian shook his head. "Sanlong, you've worn the brocade immortal before, but for some reason, it doesn't really work on you. Maybe it's ineffective against ghost kings. Only I can do this." He removed his outer robe, dropping the white robe to the ground by his feet. Huacheng raised his brows and picked a black robe to hand to him. "Then I will take up your offer." Shilian swiftly put on that robe. Thank goodness, thank goodness. Lingwen's black robe wasn't revealing in the bosom area, wasn't sensual in any way, and was very conservative and proper, so putting it on wasn't difficult. Shilian looked up. "Okay, you can give me an order now." Huacheng's right hand was holding his left elbow, while his left hand supported his chin, and he looked at Shilian, seeming to be thinking very seriously for a moment, before he said, "Then, Gege, my order is..." A moment later came the anticipated command. Huacheng smiled happily. "Let's borrow some spiritual powers." Of course, Shilian understood what he meant by borrow spiritual powers, and his head almost smoked. He quickly took off the robe and said, It's not this one." "Oh, what a shame. It's not this one," Huacheng lamented. Shilian schooled his expression. "Sanlong, this isn't right. You have to be more serious. Don't give orders like these." Huacheng replied modestly, "Am I not serious enough? Then what kind of orders do you mean? Can Gege be more specific on that?" Shilian coughed twice softly and replied with seriousness, "Either way, you can't make me borrow spiritual powers from you. Everything else is fine, like turn around in a circle, jump twice or something, whatever you want." Huacheng cocked an eyebrow. "Everything else is fine, right? Very well, I understand." Then he handed Shilian another set of robes. Shilian swiftly put it on and looked up again at Huacheng. Huacheng watched him for a moment. "Gege." A short moment later, he smiled widely. "Don't borrow spiritual powers from me." He'd been careless. How could Huacheng do this? Shilian hastily removed that robe. "Okay, it's not this one either." But Huacheng stopped him. "Wait, Gege, who says it's not this one? You haven't proven it yet." "Don't borrow spiritual powers from me," was Huacheng's order. If Shilian was to prove the robe he was wearing right now wasn't the brocade immortal, then he must not obey Huacheng's order, which meant he had to do the opposite thing, borrow spiritual powers from Huacheng. Going around in circles, and they came back to the same starting point. Shilian was shaken while staring at Huacheng's serious face. "You're too cunning. You can't do that." Huacheng hugged his arms. "Why not? Gege, didn't you say so yourself? Other than to borrow spiritual powers from me, everything else is fine. Since you didn't like that command, I gave something that was the complete opposite. So how can you say I'm cunning? Wasn't I just staying true to your words?" Shilian didn't know what to say to retaliate at all, and he raised his finger to point at him for a moment. I can't win with you. Stop playing around." Then without delay, he rushed up and kissed him. Even though he knew there was clearly no one around, after he'd done the deed, he still looked around, as if cautious of anyone who might be peeping. Huacheng's face didn't twitch in the slightest, and he said calmly, "Very good. It's been verified. This one is indeed not it either." Shilian removed that black robe. "Don't give that order again either, all right?" Huacheng passed the third one to him and smiled. Fine, fine, as Gurga wishes. Tian took the rope from him woefully, thinking to himself. It feels like Sunlang is getting harder and harder to deal with. Is this just my imagination? He was still worried Huacheng might give more prankish orders, but after joking around twice, Huacheng indeed stopped teasing him. Yet now that he was being serious, Tian actually felt it was odd. However, after trying on the few dozens of robes inside the chest, Tian didn't obey any of the orders. Could the real Brocade Immortal not be here? That was impossible. Lingwen must have already taken it off, and the entire chest was tainted with its aura of evil, so it must be in here. Huacheng leaned against the door bar. Gurga, it seems this Brocade Immortal isn't just ineffective against me. It doesn't work for you either. What was the problem?